So in that painting, it would be me standing behind them and them walking off into the sunset in whatever direction they want to go, because they now have autonomy and they are truly living like the way that they are destined to be.
What's up, world? I am your host, BA, and this is Take Your Homeboy to Work Day podcast, your favorite podcast to learn about careers. Here's what you can expect by tuning in. Each episode, guests from different professions share the arcs of jobs held, their education and training, their skills and experiences acquired, salary expectations, and the intrinsic fulfillment that motivates them. So for anyone interested in hearing the first-hand experience of a career, let these conversations be your launching pad to learn more. Today's conversation will be rich and layered as we discuss the career of Marthea Pitts. Marthea has found success as an entrepreneur and a career coach focused on social workers, and her many journeys as a community servant gave her the foundation to thrive. She's worked as a frontline social worker, an educator, and a community advocate fighting for fair distribution of resources from government leadership. We're going to do our best to dive into all of these experiences and connect the best skills she's learned from each. So thank you for coming onto the show and welcome, Marthea.
Thank you, Brandon, for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I can honestly say it is truly an honor. I admire the work that you're doing because I love a good conversation about career exploration and what people can do in the world. So thank you for having me.
Oh, well, thank you for those words, and I'm glad we were able to connect, and I'm just excited to talk to you also. So I gave a brief introduction of who you are and a little bit about your career, but in your own terms, can you explain a little bit about yourself and your career high level?
Sure. Hey. My name is Marthea Pitts. I am a Florida resident. I have lived in Florida all of my life, actually. Born and raised in South Florida, Palm Beach County to be exact.
Hey.
Yes, but I consider Tallahassee to be my second home. I've been here for quite some time. So I've lived in South Florida, now North Florida, a little bit on the East Coast in Jacksonville, but Tallahassee and Palm Beach County is home. I love to laugh. So if you hear me giggle a time or two throughout our conversation, just know that's Marthea. I purposely laugh every day because it feeds my soul and it makes me feel good. So I make time to laugh until my stomach hurts, until my head hurts. And when that happens, it's a good day. Um, I also am a story collector and a storyteller. So don't be surprised if I whip out a story or two, because what I've realized or what I've learned over the last year or so from my career coaching clients is that people love my stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I always have a story in my back pocket. Professionally, I am known on the social work streets as the MSW Coach. I am a social worker by profession. I am a macro social worker, so I'm on the other side of the profession. Typically, people know only about two aspects of social work, but I'm on the other side. And how I explain to non social workers what that is that I'm more on the administrative side, but more on a high level. Into a high level approach. So, what that looks like is in my last position, I worked with mayors around the country and helping them design equitable career pathways and opportunities for under resourced populations and communities. My population is pregnant and parenting youth and young adults. So all of my work stems around making certain that youth and young adults have the supports employment wise they need to become self sufficient. And as Brandon shared earlier, I'm also a social entrepreneur. I am on a mission to help more social workers get into national and global spaces to move the needle closer to progress for their populations and issues. So I basically teach them what I did to pivot my career. And we'll talk more about that as well. But thank you for having me, Brandon.
Yes, yes, that was awesome. And let me go ahead and give you a compliment on the jewel about the importance of laughing and smiling, because I thought that was really an important thing that you brought up about something you focused on doing every day. So, and I want to encourage the listeners how important that is. I was just reading something about Steph Curry, and most people, when they're stressed out while playing, they show frustration, but he actually smiles and laughs when he's out there on the court when he feels frustrated, and that contributes to his success. So, I thank you for dropping that jewel early on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I learned something new today. Thanks.
So, we're gonna work through your career, but I'd love to start with, I guess the foundation all comes from you being a social worker and being a servant to others, and then you've built on that. So, I guess can you first share what got you interested into social work? Was it part of your family? Was there a specific scenario that happened in your life? How'd you get into this?
Yeah, no, Brandon. I didn't grow up saying I wanted to be a social worker. Um, Actually, the story is quite funny. I spent years working in state government, in Tallahassee state government jobs as goals, especially during the time where I was working my way up in the ranks. So I started out many years on the front line working in state government, specifically in call center jobs, because at that time I had a high school diploma.
Mhm,
So it was in those positions that I began to, well, one of my jobs specifically was with the agency that deals with child welfare issues and situations. I won't name the organization. But it was in that position that I began to be introduced to like social services work and really starting getting like a glimpse from the inside of what was going on. And at that time, I had a really good friend who was not a social worker by profession, but she worked in case management jobs with numerous different organizations around town. And she would talk to me about um, becoming a social worker. And I was adamant. I'm like, no, I don't want to be a social worker because I don't want to take people's kids. So my scope around about the profession was very limited. It was only because that was all that I saw in my position, working at that call center. And so I took a year sabbatical between getting my bachelor's degree and my master's degree. And I always tell people during that year that was the best year of my life because that was when I could really sit still, be still, and hear from God about what it is that I was supposed to do.
mhm,
And at that time, that's when I basically I basically was like clear on the fact that I needed to become a social worker because of my own life experiences. And that was the main thing my friend used to talk to me about for years. Like, this wasn't a one time conversation. She was like, Marthea, you would be a really good social worker because of the things that you have overcome in your life and gone through, and you really can help other people.
mhm.
So I fought it tooth and nail into that year of the sabbatical, and then I enrolled at the Florida A&M University in their Master of Social Work program, and that was the journey to become a social worker.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for that introduction, I guess. And how I guess as you are working with social workers now, how did your time serving in those roles prepare you to help and career coach others?
Great question. So I intentionally did not lead with my receipts, but Marthea has no problem with marketing herself
Mhm.
because that's one thing that I teach my career coaching clients. So I am also a three-time award-winning workforce development career counselor. So at the time that I was working on my Master of Social Work degree, I worked in a local regional workforce board. So there is a federal law policy that mandates that every state in the country has to deliver workforce development services. And so every region then is required to have a board and local offices. So I worked in that local office as a workforce development career counselor. I view myself only as being a case manager, but that position was life changing. I learned in that position about the glaring inequities in the workforce development delivery system. And basically, what I tell people is I got a battery in my back because I was just so concerned with the fact that my career seekers that I was serving wasn't really getting the support that they needed. And it was more on the level of policy interpretation. So implicit bias is real. So one day I was sitting in my cubicle and my coworker who's really into like looking at stats and data, she had pulled these reports from another region and she was like, "Look, Marthea, in this region, they can do this activity for like indefinitely. Whereas in my region, our participants can only do it for a very limited period of time." And so, why this matters is because the program heavily mandated the requirement of work activity, which looked like volunteering up to 40 hours a week. So, we know that time poverty is very real. So if someone is volunteering up to 40 hours a week, um, how and when will they have time to look for jobs, apply for jobs, go to interviews, and do all of the things? And all of this was based on the fact that they were receiving a safety net supplement, right? This is the TANF program. So they were receiving a couple of $100s a month in benefits. And so I really became intrigued with understanding why there was such a glaring discrepancy between the assignment of work activities. And the major thing that I walked away from that conversation with was that the racial makeup of the regions were glaringly different. And so it wasn't until I left that position and I was working at another organization that I learned that in 2017, the city that I lived in was identified to be the most economically segregated city in the nation.
Right.
That was the same year that I was working in that job, the same year that my coworkers showed me that data, and it all made sense. It made sense why we saw the same families cycling in and out of the program year after year, decade after decade. I work with a lot of OG career counselors, meaning they had been in that organization since the creation of the law that mandated the program. And they would tell me stories about the fact of them having the grandmother on their caseload and having the mother. And then now I have the daughter because I specialize in pregnant and parenting youth and young adults. And so I became even more intrigued with how can we really ensure that people get what they need the first time they come through these programs and they don't have to come in and out of the program because recidivism is high in these programs. And so I really got on a mission to work to address that. And so um, in that in that time, I created a career goal to obtain a job where I can be as close as proximate to power as possible to ensure that policy was being interpreted the way that it was supposed to be and that everyone was getting access to the services and support they were supposed to receive. And so I successfully landed a job doing just that. So basically I created a career plan in my cubicle and I was like, these are the issues I see. I want a job where I can fix this, and this.
Mhm.
And I got a job. And so I was sitting at my desk in that new position. It was the most money I had ever made. And I felt like I was changing the world for my population. And it was in that position that I was like, Marthea, you cannot change the world by yourself. And I began to think about all of the phenomenal social workers that I had worked with in my positions prior to that job. And I was like, how can I train more social workers to get into roles like this? Because I was serving as the director of the Teen Mom Learning Pathway, where I was responsible for designing, implementing, and leading a career pathway education program that's still in use worldwide to this day for pregnant and parenting youth and young adults. And so it was in that time that I was like, I need to come up with a way that I can help more people get into large scale positions like this. Also, largely because the people that I knew back home, because I had to relocate to another city for that job, the people that I knew back home in those frontline case management jobs, they were severely underpaid. I was too when I was in that job. So I was thinking like, if I'm making money like this just based off of the experience that I got on the front lines, I can help social workers make money, change their life, and change the world. And so that's how I got on the mission of just creating a program, career coaching program, where I can help more social workers make the pivot in their careers, because in the field of social work it's unheard of. Um, Macro social workers are considered to be unicorns. People don't believe that we exist. They only think that social workers are in like one-on-one direct service roles. So I created the program and I'm on cohort 10 currently. And that's how I got to that point.
That's awesome. I was reading some of your posts on LinkedIn, and you were talking about how you work to make social lives better because they give so much of themselves to help others while ignoring their own needs, and they're severely underpaid. And so I love that you are working with a community that deserves respect financially and gives them time to prioritize themselves after they've dedicated so much of their energy and emotional energy and physical energy to other people. So I love that you have found that mission in what you're doing. And you actually answered one of my next questions, which talks about, what is the value or the output that you get from what you do? And so by already weaving in how you're improving people's lives, I love that you already do that. So thank you for sharing that. One of the terms you used was being a macro social worker. Can you break that down, please?
Sure. And also, I just want to add on the question that you just covered. An additional value and output that I get from my work is that ultimately, by having more passionate change makers out in the world doing this large scale change making work, it's not only improves the lives of the populations that they serve, but ultimately it improves the lives of my population. So it's kind of self-serving, right? I'm helping social workers get out in the world because I want them to create um, equitable opportunities for their population, but mine as well, right?
Mhm.
Um, Workforce development, or excuse me, careers is not like an isolated area of our life. We need access to housing, we need quality housing, we need access to quality transportation, we need safe environments, schools, and communities. So my thinking is by helping other social workers get in the world and work in their respective areas, it will make the world better for pregnant and parenting youth and young adults as well. So I just wanted to talk about that. And can you repeat the last question? I didn't write it down. I'm a note taker, Brandon, but I didn't take that one down.
It was about you used the term macro social worker, and can you explain what that term means for somebody who may not be well versed in it?
Sure. So macro social workers are uh, a very layman's terms that I like to use sometimes is change makers.
Mhm.
We work to repair, create new, or eliminate systems level issues. So instead of focusing on the individual, like some social workers do in counseling services or in case managers, we work to address systems level issues. So what that looks like is instead of our conversations being targeted to a client or a participant, our conversations are targeted to lawmakers, policy actors, funders over national and global initiatives and efforts. We are at the decision making table of the thing. So we're not even talking to the people, the CEOs and the directors over your local nonprofit. We're way above that level. And the reason that we are needed is because a lot of the times conversations about people's lives and what people need social support wise does not take into effect like the human side of people's needs, right?
Mhm.
Usually these conversations are being held by people with business degrees, people with JD degrees, people who have not worked in the community with the actual people experiencing the problem. So macro social workers are at the table to add that humanistic perspective of these are real humans that we're talking about. This is what they need. And then also make it more of holistic of an holistic approach. So, like I said earlier, we can't talk about jobs without talking about quality, affordable housing. We can't talk about jobs without talking about mass transportation systems.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
so, the importance of macro social workers is that we keep that at the forefront of the conversation while centering the voices of our population. And so we would love for organizations to actually talk with the people that they are creating these products, efforts, initiatives around. But unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. So my thoughts are, who's better? Who else is better than to be in these conversations than social workers who have experience working in the community with the actual people experiencing the problem? And just an example of that, the reason I went and found that director position was because in my job as a workforce development career counselor, I heard every day from my career seekers, Miss Pitts, I don't want a GED, I want my high school diploma. But there were no local programs in my city that supported them being working students, parents. You essentially had to be a traditional student and go sit in the classroom all day. How are you going to do that if you're trying to raise a child and take care of family?
mhm,
So I heard their needs every day, even though the program I was in was designed to just push them in a GED program or out into work. They were like, I want my high school diploma. So I went and found an online high school that allowed me the opportunity to design a program that would allow them to get a high school diploma while still working to do that and not add anything to their already full plate. So macro social workers really work to repair and fix the system,
mhm.
but on a higher, large scale level.
Yeah. Wow. Let me ask you this because we live in a capitalist society. Now I studied business at FAM, so I look at everything with a money lens. But your conversations aren't easily quantifiable. When you want to talk about the holistic human, those conversations aren't able to be quantified all the time. So how do you how do you motivate somebody to focus on that holistic human side? How did you influence people to make the changes to focus on the holistic human side when when we look at everything with a money lens? How did your negotiations or influencing, how did you do that?
Great question. Actually, it can be quantified, right? So, my time working in Washington, D.C., at one of the oldest think tanks in the country, that was oftentimes a question from at least one policy actor in the room around what is the return on investment?
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
they're struggling with being able to communicate that with their community stakeholders to get buy in on why we should dedicate this pot of money to this initiative around workforce development for youth and young adults. And so basically how you do that is you pull the data of looking at how much does it cost to continue to serve the same family, and I'm just using this as an example, the same family decade after decade in a workforce development program rather than giving them access to quality, good paying jobs the first time so
Mhm.
they're not cycling in 20 to 30 years later. So there are or national organizations out there that specifically look at the return of investment and they create materials and provide technical assistance to aid in those conversations of this is how it affects the bottom line, really. You are really costing yourself more money in the end by not solving the root cause problem. So yeah, I have my bachelor's is in business too. So I know that's one of the things that I pride my success on is that I'm able to separate my personal from the business because I know business at the end of the day, there's people that only see things in black and white. So there are ways to do that, and that is a large part of the conversation about what how are we gonna do this like physically.
Yeah.
So
One of the things that I love about your career and what you shared is, how you found your mission, how you knew you wanted to do something bigger and contribute at a higher level to society. And with your career coaching, you do that also, I imagine. You're helping social workers find a bigger mission where they can use their skills and gifts to contribute. What questions did you ask yourself to find that mission, or what type of internal reflecting did you do to find that mission that you could share with other people to do?
Oh, Brandon, you must have been in my week this week. So actually, actually, this week I facilitated a free workshop for those who follow my work. As of right now, I have over 10,000 social workers worldwide that follow me between all of my platforms, my podcast, my weekly emails, all of the things. And one of the things that me and my team have learned over the last 3 years is that um, confidence is a major issue, right? And so I facilitated a workshop of around how to push through the fear and show up anyway in your career. And so I shared with them 3 strategies. These weren't strategies Marthea pulled out of the air. These were strategies I actually used back in my case management days to prepare myself for this work because I was clear that this is what I was supposed to do. And so a lot of that stems around first getting clear on my why. And this is what I shared with them on during the workshop. Creating your why statement, actually writing that out and being clear about why you want to do this work, why it's so important, and then revisiting it often. So I always when I'm a believer, Brandon. So I listen to sermons every morning, and one of the things that I keep hearing on repeat in sermons is that if your work is truly what you are supposed to be doing, if it's truly your purpose, it will benefit you first and then benefit other people.
Mhm.
So my why statement back in the day, which is still my why statement, was I want to change my life. I'm only making $37,100 in this job. I want to move to thrive in my life, but also at the same time, I want to make certain that my career seekers have access to um, equitable, like workforce opportunities. So, how I was able to do that was staying centered on my why and making certain that I kept that at the forefront of my mind. So I shared with my people on Thursday was that I had it in my cubicle on my computer. I looked at it every day. I had it on the dashboard of my car. I had it on the back door, the back of my front door, and I would look at it every morning as I walked out the door. So that was how I, um, like, made certain that I was clear about what I was doing and why it was so important.
Awesome. Respect. And thank you for sharing those tangible steps. I appreciate it. And I'm sure the audience will too. I want to ask this next question. I mean, you have a rich career, so this is kind of a two-part question. I'd love to know what's been your proudest achievement. First, with the community. So whether it's working with pregnant women or in early childhood education, I'd love to hear what your proudest achievement with the community has been, and then what's been your proudest achievement as a career coach with social workers.
So my most proudest achievement with the community, I would say, would be my for years, now I don't really go out. I have my groceries delivered. But for years, when I would go into the grocery store, I would see my career seekers from my days in working on the front lines as a career counselor. And one time, one of my career seekers, she, because due to confidentiality, I won't speak to them because I can't acknowledge that I know them. I had a working relationship with them, but they will come to me. So if they initiate the engagement, then it's okay. And so what I started to notice was that every time when I went out, I would run into one of my career seekers. It would be in the middle of the day, and I'm just trying to get some turkey to cook my meal, and somebody's coming up to me, "Hey, Miss Pitts, how you doing? Things are going good. This is what's going on, blah blah blah." Or I would be in the grocery line going to Walmart late night to pick up some last minute items, and then my career seekers are in there like, "Hey, Miss Pitts, what's going on? This is what I'm doing. This is where I'm working." Right. So that became my greatest achievement because that's when I started realizing, like, this work is bigger than you. I thought I was just getting a paycheck, even though I was seeing these issues. But I would say that's my greatest achievement. Anytime one of my career seekers sees me out and about,
Mhm.
and tells me like how they are doing in the world, where they are, the fact that they're now teachers and all of the things that makes me feel good. My achievement for my career clients and my group career coaching program is anytime they get a career win, Brandon, I get a new job, right? So I celebrate it. I don't know how to dance, but if I knew how to dance, I would do a dance, right? So I actually celebrate their wins harder than they do. So those are my proudest achievements. Anytime that my career coaching clients land a job, that's it. I just recorded a podcast episode with one of my clients earlier this week, which is going to change the game in social work because it's a black male in social work that has landed not one but two macro jobs, right? We already say macro jobs are unheard of, but he landed two. And I saw him on Monday and I was like, "You're looking good. He was like, I feel good." He was like, "I'm able to sleep now," because before he used to work overnight. So the fact that he's glowing like that and living like really standing in his being a king, that makes me feel good, right? So I've been on a high about that all week.
Respect, respect, respect. Thank you for sharing. I want to actually ask you to think abstract with this next question. Imagine I hired a painter to commemorate your career or what you do into a painting or a picture. How would you tell the painter to, what would you tell the painter to draw? What kind of picture would you describe? How would how do you encapsulate what you do as just a painting or an image?
I would say I would be like standing at if there was let's say there was an imaginary stage. I would be standing at the stage and everyone would be like, have their back to me and walking off into the sunset because I love yellow. I love the sunset. The morning is a new day with new beginnings. So people will be walking out into the sunset. And what that would symbolize for me is that people are really able to now live freely. Because I say that when I got my macro job, my life changed. It changed in every way possible, in a good way. I was making more money. Time freedom became real. Before I would like be mad waking up in the morning. I normally say another word. I would be mad waking up in the morning and angry and like I just felt uncomfortable sitting in the office every day from 8 to 5. But when I was working my macro jobs, because I'm full time in my business now, I was able to make my own schedule. Oh, I can make my own schedule and come in at 1 p.m. I don't have to rush like a mad woman out the house to get to the job. So our time freedom and just freedom to have autonomy in your career. So in that painting, it would be me standing behind them and them walking off into the sunset in whatever direction they want to go because they now have autonomy and they are truly living like the way that they are destined to be.
That's awesome. And a beautiful picture. I can envision it now. Do you sometimes have to let certain people go because they aren't ready to make the growth that is necessary to work with you?
No, I always move in integrity, but one thing I will say though that I'm learning is it is so hard for people to unlearn the things that they have learned prior to meeting me.
Mhm.
And so I was telling a friend of mine that a few weeks ago about, oh my gosh, it's so hard. It's hard to get people to move when you see the greatness in them because mindset, confidence is a real issue, right? And I know this personally for myself. And so I always reflect back on where I was as a case manager because I didn't jump off the front porch the way I am now. This is years of professional development. This is years of my mentors in that case management workforce development job pushing me to speak up in meetings. Marthea, people are waiting to hear from you, right? So when I am working like that with my career coaching clients, I always say this is what it felt like for the people back in my life back then because I know I was stubborn. It's like, what do you mean you want me to talk? No, I'm not gonna talk because I'm a natural introvert. So I would say that yes, it is hard, and I'm learning every day that it's hard being a leader, especially when you have the vision. But like my mama told me years ago, you have to learn when people are in a place to receive it
Mm, mhm.
and they are not, you have to part of your gift is to understand when it's time for you to just back away and let them receive it because people have been trying to give me like move me into my destiny for years and I wouldn't move, right? And so yeah, that's the hardest part. And so another thing that I give a good heart to heart, right? That's when Marthea leans in. We're gonna have a real conversation about what is really happening here. But yeah, I try to meet where they are and support them on their journey because I know that fear of change is real. Fear of the year is real. And then also, I've recently learned from my dissertation coach that for some people, dreaming is scary. Me, I dream every day. I always tell
Mhm.
people the life that I'm living now is the dreams that I had back in 2017. Like it's because I allowed myself to dream. But yeah, I'll have a heart to heart in a minute now.
You've mentioned being a woman of faith and that you listen to sermons or motivational speeches daily. Would you be willing to share maybe some of the personalities or people you listen to, or maybe a favorite book that has been motivational for you?
Sure. In 2019, and I'm looking at it right now, I started reading, well, it's more of a, mm, it's more like a workbook, but book. Iyanla Van Zant, One Day My Soul just opened up. And it was the first book where I actually completed all of the exercises. This is more of like a journal. And so I completed it from beginning to end. That was when I was in my first macro job. I love to after my morning devotion and prayer and reading the Bible, I ask God to like direct me to a sermon that because you're supposed to meditate on the word. And so usually the first sermon that'll come up is because I search it also are sermons by TD Jakes, but then also one of his proteges, and I'm looking for his name and I probably won't be able to find it right now. Joel Toolman, I believe it is Toolman.
Okay.
So I listen to sermons like that. I actually was listening to one right before we logged in. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Now we're coming towards the end. I have a couple more questions. The last one of the last questions is usually a pop quiz question that I don't put onto the early sheet because I love to just hear the answer off the fly. So, are you ready?
Yeah, what you got?
So imagine that you are in A&R with a record company and you've been given an unlimited budget to create the song of your choice, and you get to pick any three musical artists and one producer to make the beat. Which musical artist and which producer are you picking for the song?
Okay, so I'm writing that down. And one producer. So when you were talking, I immediately thought of Monica because I've been playing her a lot lately. We gotta have Mary.
Mhm.
And then for the third person, I'm gonna say Fantasia or either Maya. I know you said three. Look at me giving four.
All good, all good.
Fantasia is my girl, and then Maya. I've been listening to a lot of her songs. And producer. It gotta be Missy Elliott.
True. Okay, that's a powerhouse record. I can see you get the songwriting of Monica, the soul of Mary, the powerful voice of Fantasia, and then you get the bop, the nice quality bop from Missy. I love that song.
Yes.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming so much onto the show. I want as many people who are listening to this show to maybe reach out to you as a resource and maybe even take your course. Where can they learn more about your where can they learn more about your career coaching if they want to use you?
Yes. So you can connect with me by visiting my website, Macro and Paid, Macro, and is spelled out ANDPAID And just to be clear, I work with social workers primarily, but I work with anyone from any profession other than like the STEM careers who are interested in large scale change making work. I want to help people get in every industry, organization type and setting. Like I'm on a mission right now to get somebody in the environmental space, and get someone in the law, like law fields and all of the things to work towards being change makers. So Macro and Paid is where you can find me. That's where all of my social media handles are. My home base is Instagram at _MSW Coach. I'm going live currently once a week. So you should be able to catch me somewhere between then. So if you are not a social worker, tell a friend to tell a friend to follow the MSW Coach at macroandpaid.com.
Marthea, this was awesome. I love doing this show because it's a way for me to continue to learn more about the world and how people contribute to it. And your spirit, your energy is infectious, and I'm so happy that I got to meet you and to come across you. And I feel like I've learned some things that's going to help me become a better person. So thank you for sharing yourself with me and with my audience. I truly appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Brandon. And like I shared earlier, in all seriousness, the magnitude of what you're doing with your podcast, you probably think about it, but I really don't think you understand how large of an impact you are making by having these conversations. Because over the years, and even in my days of working in higher ed, I have met students, traditional, non-traditional, who did not know what options they had career wise, and they just randomly select something off of a sheet of paper. So the fact that you are exposing people to these conversations is needed. Based on the research, we should be exposing our children to conversations about careers in middle school. So the fact that you have your podcast, I love it. Keep up the great work, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for those words. Thank you for the support, and I wish you success in everything going forward. Hey, before you go, we need your help to spread our message. So please subscribe, like, and rate 5 stars wherever you get your podcast and on LinkedIn at Take Your Homeboy to Work Day Podcast. Thank you.